Good. Well, hello, Rebel, and welcome to. I think it's episode 8 now of oh no, episode 9 foul language. Anyway, we're pretty far through. It is episode 8, in fact. Yes, I just fact checked my own self. I am here with Luminous Light because you guys demanded more rel coaches. You said I was being unfair. You said I was only picking G-Man coaches. Really, I was just picking people that answered me, and you know, I didn't want to invite. You know, I wanted to interview you, Luminous. Don't think I was ignoring you, but you know, I was waiting for you to kind of progress through the playoffs and see where you got to, so we could have like talk about that and things like that. But obviously, you know, most of our people know you as a Rebel admin. You're a very, very skilled Skaven coach. You've been around the Rebel for a very long time, and the game switched views on me, so I'm going to have to switch that back. So welcome.
Hey, I'm glad to be here.
Now, first of all, if you wouldn't mind starting us off with just a little bit of an introduction about who you are, that'd be fantastic.
Sure. So, my real name is Michael. That's my first name. I used to live in Michigan, but I moved out to San Francisco, out into the West Coast. I'm 26, and I also what I do for a living is I work as a software engineer for a healthcare IT company. Working on basically a messaging application currently, but that can change in the future.
So is this why you're so good at Reddit and things, then? Is it just from work experience, or...?
Well, I mean, I was always technically inclined, like, from a very young age. We had this old Windows 3.1 computer, and played around that for a lot, figured out a lot of things there, and then you move on to Windows 95 and 98. And that's only when I was, like, in my, like, 10, 11, before it was before like the internet was starting to get there, but it wasn't in every household, and it wasn't in my household yet. So you learn things just by trying, and I got fairly comfortable, and ultimately, yeah, I went into computer science. So I have a good understanding of how these things are built, so it's pretty easy to understand how they work.
Well, you're certainly better at Reddit than I am, which is why I always pass all this stuff off to you and look really lazy. Because I'm like, Reddit formatting, this is hard. But
yeah, some of it's not straightforward.
I'm kind of getting better. But anyway, I also want to give a quick shout out to the fact that you are the leader of the REL clan for the clan league. So technically we're enemies, but I'm going to try and be as nice as possible to you for the rest of the interview. Well, that'll change though, you know?
Right, yeah. Especially when, I don't know, like, if we're going to face each other first, or...
Well, I think it's drawn randomly. Okay. I'm not that... Basically, you know, all the random stuff, we wait until everyone's confirmed, and then we're going to set out a season, and we'll go from there. But I'm super excited for it. I think it'd be really interesting to kind of finally settle the big Rel G-Man kind of thing, and I get to be, like, the admin clan who comes and plays spoiler to everyone's fun.
Yeah, sure. And there's no excuses like the Rel cannibalizes itself, and the G-Man's just full of elf teams that throws touchdowns to each other back and forth. That's why they have all the SPP.
It's all fresh. It's all fresh teams. Although, to be fair, Dreamify is kind of annoyed that I've stolen some of his coaches, but I did have a very small pool to choose from. In my defense, because I'm only allowed admins.
Yeah, because I'm already in one, so it's like, I don't know if I couldn't really be a part of two of them.
Well, no,
that wouldn't work at all.
Well, I couldn't invite you, Dreamify, Walkathon, Squiggy, you know, instantly wrote all you guys off. So I gave away half my admin pool just by asking admins to be clan leaders. So there was that. But anyway, on with the questions, because we've talked too much already. So one of our regular questions, and we've got a good mix of regular questions now because so many good questions have been asked that they've just started to be proper, you know, regular questions come back week after week. So my first question is going to be, how did you get into Blood Bowl?
So I got back into Blood Bowl during Blood Bowl Chaos Edition. I think a lot of people came around then. They were doing these, it was primarily due to exposure due to these YouTubers. Specifically, like, you could say Strippin was a part of it, Kenor was a part of it, Krendor was a part of it. It was the Speed Bowl League. I don't know if you've heard of it, where they were doing the good old 40-second turn leagues, and they were hilarious to watch because the amount of stuff that you can do in 40 seconds, especially with like the lag and all of this, there would just be seconds would be wiped by using actions and stuff. So
And Blood Bowl, the original Blood Bowl's really ugly UI as well, and
yeah, you'd be trying to like navigate, and you'd have to click something as quick as you can because the seconds are ticking off, and you'd always like move your like you'd be very strategic. Like teams that had to do a lot of blocks would generally not be able to complete their turns in 40 seconds. So it's interesting because elf teams actually had an advantage because the time stopped when you moved. So like the faster your guys were, the more time you had to think about your strategy. But that's ultimately how I decided to get the game. And then I joined a league. It was a newbie league actually. So very similar to like the Rebel Rookie League, except it was completely run by newbies. There was no veteran coach to be found. It's called the 50 CG BBL. There's actually, I don't know if there's any remaining coaches from that who are in the Rebel. A lot of people aren't around anymore. They either moved on to different things, especially the people who created that league originally. And after that, and then I joined the RBBBL, which was the Blood Bowl CE's version of it. Well, I mean the Reddit version of the Blood Bowl CE of what we have now.
So you're like really one of our OGs then, aren't you? You've been here since like back in the day.
It's probably been about 3 years. I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of people who've been around Blood Bowl since it was first came out, and I wasn't one of those. So I feel kind of junior to them. But in terms of this community here, I'm probably one of the more senior ones.
Well, we'll get you a walking stick and a little pipe to sit by the fire for next season, shall we? If we keep growing.
Yeah.
But no. So moving on, what team did you start with then, and what team was your true first love?
So, as I said, the 50 CG BBL was the first league that I'd ever played, and I actually played one game against the computer just to get the mechanics, and then I just immediately jumped into player on player in that league. It was a Lizardmen matchup, and I was playing as Norse, actually. So I had chosen Norse to be my first team. And a lot of people were like, you choose orcs, or you choose humans, and I kind of wanted to be a little bit contrarian, but I didn't want to pick something that I felt like I would struggle with, like lower tier teams. Norse is a pretty high tier team, and they're pretty easy to get a hang of. And so I played there in that league, and I actually made it to the finals of that league, which was pretty good given that I had never played the game before. And
is that speaking to how quickly you picked it up, or the standard of players you were facing?
A little bit of both, I think. I actually had. When I first started the game, I had a fairly decent foundation just by watching other coaches. At least I would watch Knorr videos, the tutorials. I kind of read up some stuff about builds and things. I've certainly become a way better coach since then, especially in terms of skill choices, injuries, when to replace, when to not. I ultimately lost the finals. I lost it to a person I'd probably consider a rival, who's probably no longer playing the game, called Vinny the Fish, and he was playing as orcs. So it was a tough matchup for me, and it was just a struggle of a game in the finals. But yeah. Okay.
So your kind of first team was Norse, but what was your first love in the game? Was it?
Oh yeah, the first love. Yeah. So after that, there was another league. That's when I joined the RBBL, and I think this is where I actually had probably the most success. It was with Undead. I had chosen Undead, did the usual 2 mummies, 3 ghouls. I think I had all zombies. I don't know if I had gotten a skeleton at the time, and I won every single game except the final in that league. So that was about 13 games. 13 games, right? And that wasn't necessarily just new coaches. That was basically the Reddit version of what we have. So there were some experienced coaches, some new coaches, especially with like the Speed Bowl happening and all that. There was new coaches getting flooded in, so there's probably a mix of both.
Okay, fantastic. And I suppose that's kind of, I always like that question because everyone always associates you with the team you've played the longest with the Rebel, and then it doesn't always turn out to be that team, and it's quite interesting.
I actually I didn't really play Skaven that much in Blood Bowl Chaos Edition at all, to tell you the truth. I actually was playing a lot more elves, pro elves and high elves. The reason why I chose Skaven, especially for this league, was because I really hadn't played them that much. So I just wanted to get a better understanding of how they played, how they worked, and I've learned quite a bit. If you looked, well, you can't look, but Some of my old replays, I go back and look, and I'm just like, I just look and say, what was I thinking there? Like, why did I expose my players like that? Like I was playing like a drop back elf, where you have a passer, you drop them back, you send your catchers down the pitch if you want, as if I was trying to two-turn every single time. And I've kind of learned not to do that. You learn very quickly that's a great way to lose gutter runners and catchers and all that, unless you have to.
Yeah, it's Venichar take note there, I think, for that one. Because he does like the fast scores. And the high
Yeah. I'm sure he has learned that it exposes his catchers and they get hit a lot.
Okay, so having played quite a bit then and you've been around for a while, what is your favourite skill in the game? And what is your favourite player in the game, would you say? It's like a two-part question, that one.
Right. Yeah, that's a harder question, but let's see if I had to give it a rough answer. I'm just trying to think through all of my experience in Blood Bowl and kind of what goes. Block is like an easy choice, but everybody gets that. In terms of a skill, I honestly really like Stand Firm now. I've been really growing up to the skill. I never really picked it much earlier in my Blood Bowl career, but it is very, very strong in terms of positioning. It makes it difficult for that coach to blitz him, because if he doesn't knock him down, it's a problem. Same with Sidestep, except Sidestep you can kind of position around it. Like if you put him on the ball carrier, then you can kind of like make it so he has to sidestep away. But Stand Firm, you need Juggernaut to counter it. And there's not a whole lot of Juggernaut that's picked, because usually there's other skills.
Fantastic. I think we've actually had almost a different answer every week to that one, so I quite like that everyone has their own
interesting
style.
And for favorite players, that's the next question you had posed, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
I really like gutter runners for one turning potential. Let's see. But I would have to go. One of my favorite teams is High Elves, and it's High Elves because I really like High Elf catchers.
Okay.
I think, and usually you come to this opinion. The difference between Pro Elf and High Elf catchers is that Pro Elf catchers have Nerves of Steel, and that's something I don't particularly value that highly. I mean, you get it for 10,000, but it's not that valuable, at least in my perspective, at least with how I play. The way I build my catchers is they ultimately do everything. I have a team in Cole called the Capital Autocrats, and they've got every kind of catcher that you can think of. They got a killer catcher with palm and tackle and all that, and they've got I don't think I have a plus movement catcher yet for the one scoring threat, but they can do that, especially if you get 2 plus movements. Then you can use them as like a strip baller, wrestle and strip ball and all that. With their good movement, they can go and generally get to the ball carrier from most sides of the pitch. But yeah, that's my answer.
All right, fantastic. I think we've had a different answer for that question every week as well, which is pretty fantastic. Now, Dreamify from the Jungle Corsairs wants to know, obviously, when I've been doing a lot of casting for the playoffs and things like that, and when we're doing those, and when we're doing recaps and things, because, around the content we make for the league, we always try and find a narrative and a storyline and a history of games that you've played against certain opponents and things like that. But who would you genuinely consider your rivals were within the league?
In the league, so I'll give you an interesting tidbit. There's a lot of people that I had considered rivals in the past from leagues that I'd played in the past, especially the RBBBL. There's a lot of coaches that aren't playing anymore that I would love to get a second chance at, because I had gotten to a lot of finals and then just lose the last game. A good example, I don't know if you know Lamina Glisse or Uki Kabuki. I don't know if that rings any names to you. Probably doesn't.
We had a message from a Lamina Glisse actually interested in rejoining us, but I don't know if they ever followed through with the application or what their Blood Bowl
He was one of the persons that I consider a rival. So I actually played against him, and this was RBBL season 4, I think. And I was playing as Pro Elves, and he was playing... No, not Pro Elves. It was Undead. I was playing as Undead, and then, so it was 2.5, and he was playing it as Chaos Dwarves. And that game went to 32 turns because that's how overtime to rules worked back in Blood Bowl CE. So it was a long ass game. And what happened is in overtime, the ball was on the ground. One of us would pick it up. We would strip it, and it would just go bouncing. And then the process repeated for like 8 or 9 turns before I eventually my armor started breaking because I was undead. I didn't have the luxury of armor 9 that the Chaos Dwarves did. So I ultimately lost that game in overtime. But for people in the league, let's see. If I had to think, Kool-Aid has always been a coach that I've had very close matches with. Every single one has always gone down to the wire. Maybe with the exception of the first one. And the first one, I had a lot of luck. But in the playoffs, that one was really close. The one in the regular season this time was really close. Other people...
It is worthy of a note while you're thinking on about that. It was actually part of the commentary when we were actually commentating on the U versus Sage game was the narrative that if you got to win, you got to go and get your revenge for last season's playoffs against Kool-Aid, and a lot of people.
Yeah, that was what I was thinking as well. But when Sage had a really good first game, I would have loved to play against Sage first match. I would have switched spot. I would have loved to trade spots with my opponent and play that extra game because Sage had no tackle when he first entered the playoffs. And that made a pretty significant difference, especially in knocking down gutter runners. And ultimately, he was able to remove all of my gutter runners. And I think without that tackle, it would have been a bit more difficult. But it was just unfortunate that I had to face Sage, who had gotten fed by his previous opponent. But what can you do?
Well, Sage got a lot of casualties throughout the Super Bowl. It was one of the things he was very noted for on his campaign was that a lot of bodies hit the floor on the way through.
Yeah, certainly.
Okay, cool. Now, who are you most looking forward to go? Obviously, we've had a massive change in divisions. I mean, we've had 4 active divisions or 3.5 active divisions in the REL, kind of compound into 2 really solid, very, very stacked divisions in Division 1 and 2. So who would you say you're most looking forwards to playing in Division 1 next season? Like, is it someone new or is it one of your old?
Is it this season or next season?
Well, this season. It was next season at the time the question was asked. This is Lynx from the Capital Rats, who is, by the way, a big fan of your work. But he was, obviously it's in Season 5, just about to start.
Okay. If I was recalling correctly, there were a couple coaches that I hadn't played yet. There was, I think Liam had joined Div 1. There was also War Boss Zogrod. I mean, I'm just listing off coaches that are new. In terms of coaches that I would like to replay that are still in the league, I guess Kool-Aid is always a match that I look forward to because it always just seems like it's always a battle in that game. Maybe against Misdays. Misdays, I struggled against him last season, actually. We tied ultimately, but I don't know. He's in a better position now than he was then. So that game I'm looking forward to as well. And I think one of the scarier teams that I was surprised that came up, it was one of the necromantic teams, AKG, which I think is War Boss Zogrod, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, that's correct.
Has 2+ AG werewolves, which is quite scary. Also has a Palm White. Relatively, almost has all the pieces, except I don't think he had really any tackle. But he's almost pretty complete. Just needs a couple level ups here and there, and his team would be pretty menacing to face against.
So I'm assuming you're hoping you get him early in the draft rather than later on.
Yeah, I actually need to look at the schedules are posted. I haven't actually personally looked at them. I just know that I'm playing against Animal Farm as my first match. My game against Animal Farm last season was basically me failing about 50% of my GFIs. So I ended up and I somehow still pulled out the win, but it was just a weird game in that regards. I ended up doing probably 15 GFIs and failing 7 of them, which is pretty absurd.
That's upsetting. It happens sometimes though, so I suppose you kind of just gotta take it. But you know, it surely will be a very interesting first game. Now, what one rule or player would you change in the game given the chance? So it's one of, you know, if you could change any one thing about the game as either a rule or a player. Would it be to remove tackle?
Remove tackle, make it easier on myself. I think, and I'm probably not one of the only people that have this opinion, that the existing combo for Claw piling on, Claw Mighty Blow piling on, is very, very strong. I don't think that Blood Bowl, the new Blood Bowl's rule, is the right way to go about fixing that. But I think its current position is something. I mean, the current implementation for Claw Palm it's almost a skill. You don't need to have everyone with Claw Palm, but you would be dumb to not have any of it if your team can get it. So, I think they should like rework that, especially for like Chaos. Yeah, like for Chaos, there are Chaos teams that don't use Claw Palm, but for a very most highly successful Chaos teams like Nurgle teams have a decent amount of it. They don't necessarily have every player with it, but they have maybe 3 or 4 or something like that. At least that's my thoughts on it. There's probably people who have different thoughts.
Okay, I understand. I mean, I suppose, you know, speaking back to your first matchup, the one good thing you've got going for you is that I don't think Sace has the full combination of a Claw Pommer yet.
Yeah, he doesn't have that, fortunately.
And whereas you do. Funnily enough, even though you want to change it. You've got 2?
And I have only 1. I just got Claw on one of the other vermin. My plus strength vermin has Claw now. So, yeah, I have 1 Claw Palm. The one thing I think that's interesting to note is I think the first person who got Claw Palm in the league, I don't know if it was you. I think it was actually Kool-Aid who had gotten the first Claw Palmer. It was a Chaos Warrior, and I actually was the first. I think I was the one that killed. Well, I know I was the one that killed it, so I followed it. He ended up using the piling on, and then I did like a 2-assist foul and somehow killed him. So well, I was really lucky in that game.
If they're gonna lie on the floor for you, it's almost rude not to, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so King of the Cosmos from Alpha Sigma Sigma Ring wants to know that if you ever did suffer, I mean, you suffered a bit at the hands of Sage, but you've managed to rebuild pretty efficiently, and your team's looking really strong going into the new season, considering. But if you were ever to reroll, what would you reroll them to, assuming every race was available?
Okay, yeah, that's a good question. I really appreciate, and so when I first joined and started doing Blood Bowl, I actually did a lot of Bash, and I got an appreciation for it, but I've gradually shifted over to, at least in terms of my preferred play style, is high movement, high agility teams. Skaven obviously fitting very well in that area. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to try them. Probably one of the stronger teams that I had. Well, I don't know if it's competition that I faced against or the only team that I've ever won a structured league with is High Elves, actually. So, and it was in the it was the Blood Bowl CE Eternal Reddit League. I don't know if it was called Rel back in then. It might actually have been. I actually don't quite remember. And I won season 1 of that. There was 3 seasons, if I recall. I lost season 1 in the finals to a dwarf team. I won season 2 against Vinny the Fish, and then I lost in the finals of season 3 to Bleeding Hippie. And they're a team that I have very good success with, at least in Blood Bowl 2 in Cole. But that you can't really gauge how well you're doing in there. It's a mixed bag in terms of coaches in that area.
That's very, very true, unfortunately. Okay, cool.
And we don't have a lot of High Elves in the league. There's a couple of them, I think, that are rerolling.
We've got Pemperfort Chargers and the Diving Hawks are actually both in G-Man 1.
Okay, but in the Rel, I think there's only like 1 or 2. There aren't that many. It's one of the least picked, and at least I feel one of the lesser of the picked races, other than Bretonians.
They're not helping the stereotypes, are they? That G-Man likes Agi and Rel likes Bash.
No, but
okay, sorry.
I was just gonna say that Rel 1 is actually a lot more agile now. It has 3 Skaven teams somehow. There's 3 Skaven teams in Rel 1.
Well, we
there
figured people needed a break, you know?
and 2 Wood Elf teams. There's only 1 Lizard team left. There used to be 4, and now there's only 1. That's Eisenmike's team. I'm trying to think if there's any other agile teams. Not really coming to me. There's probably 1 more that I'm missing that I don't quite recall.
I think, yeah, as I say, it's definitely been agied up a bit, but it was, I think, as much as anything, we decided that the whole paradigm needed a bit of a shift. Because the G-Man one's got a lot bashier this season, so it's almost flipped on its head. Now, speaking about the rules and things as we have been previously, Donkey Dragon asked previously, and I like this question enough that it's stuck around, because obviously it's a big hot button topic at the moment when you think of Blood Bowl. What do you think of the new board game rules? Have you ever played the board game as well? I
actually have never played the board game, and that's because I don't know anyone who actually has played the board game. So the West Coast, at least out here, at least where I live, I don't really know anyone who's in that kind of stuff. So, and I didn't really have any friends that were big into it either. I'm sure that's where a lot of people got introduced, but I was not one of them. So I had heard about Warhammer 40K and Warhammer from... The only experience that I had was from the Dawn of War PC games done by Relic. And that's what I was coming into with that kind of experience. That was it. But you're saying how... What do I think of the rules?
I mean, you mentioned, that you don't think they've nerfed piling on the right way, but with regards to like the rules in general as they stand now compared to the version we play, what's your opinion there? Would you like to see them come across to?
There's some that I like. Some of them are kind of I don't really I don't know what to think of them yet. I think obviously my opinion on the Palm, you might as well just get rid of the skill at that point. But there was also the MVP rule. I think that was actually pretty good. It gives players a little bit more control on where their SPP goes, rather than it just being random chance. It was like pick 3 players, and the MVP randomly goes to one of them, if I recall correctly.
That's correct.
And there was I'm trying to remember. It was been a while since I've actually looked through the rules. There was like the new concept that you have to keep paying players you pay players after every season.
But you get a stack of cash like based on previous season's wins and a flat amount and things like that, and then you have to rebuy your team. So it often means that you may not be able to rebuy your entire team and things like that. Yeah,
and I think they did that to offset the attrition loss of nerfing piling on. Because the one thing I've noticed with when they're doing Blood Bowl and all that is they want to have a fair amount of attrition, like players dying, leaving, whatever. Otherwise, then you just have these monster teams, and people just stick with those teams forever. They don't necessarily make new teams. And obviously, I'm pretty sure Games Workshop wants people to buy their miniatures, buy more teams. So there's an incentive for them to make it so that there's an incentive to re-roll, as we term it in the RBBL, or take on a new team, face against teams with relatively closer matchups, rather than having these monster teams, and then you don't really have a way of entering.
Okay, so are you a fan of that kind of those ideas, or?
I think, yeah. I think it depends on the league format. Obviously, there are league formats where it may not work as well. They probably, when they designed it, they were thinking of a league format in mind, like a specific length. Maybe, I don't know. I remember when I was listening to Sage talk about it, he was saying that the longer it was, the more likely you would have the money to buy your players back. Obviously, the shorter it was, the more likely you were going to lose. So I think for longer leagues, it's fine.
Yeah, I do like, a lot of what they're doing. I think they're trying to change the game up a little bit. I have spoke many times on the podcast about ideas I haven't liked so much about what they've done, so I will kind of leave that there. But that's the first half complete. We're actually a little bit behind on the video, but that's absolutely fine. We can have a bit of a longer one this week. It's all to the good. Going into the second half, the first question, it's actually been several people have asked this, so I can't credit it to one person alone, but what's the favourite pun? Because, you know, everyone has noticed that, obviously, you've got a lot of, like, rat and food puns put together on your names. And, you know, so what is your favourite personal name on your team?
Okay, yeah, so there's one thing that I learned about making these teams was you save your good names for your positionals and your shit names for your line rats, because you're going to lose a lot of them. And I actually made that mistake. I had like all these good names when I started the first season of the Rel, and a lot of them died. Or they got niggled and they retired. A good example is of a name that you've probably never seen is Mousemellow, like marshmallow, Mousemellow.
That is really
and
good.
He was a line rat, and of course he was the first one to die because he's a line rat. And I learned very quickly that was not a good choice to put that name on him. There was another one that I liked was Strudel. I don't know if you know what a shrew is. It's kind of rodent, and obviously it's based off like a strudel, like an apple strudel. That was another name that I really liked. And he, of course, was also a line rat who died.
So have you not yet reused the name? Or is it completely new every
They're
time?
all unique. They are all unique, yes. I have gone through, out of how many people that are dead, I have about a little over 30, I think. I have the list right here. I actually have like a sheet of potential names. I have to think through them. And so there'll be some times where I'm just like sitting, let's just go look through the names. So I have a list of rodents. And types and rodent-like animals, and then I go through a list of desserts and try to figure out how can I make it so these two kind of mesh together. Some of them are pretty meh, some of them turn out to be pretty well. Obviously, Tiramisu is actually one of the later ones that I'm surprised that I never thought of it originally.
We're all very sad. We were absolutely heartbroken on that cast when he passed away. It was
it was the first turn of the playoff game too. Yeah, it was a plus. It was a minus movement, but I really can't, especially with like the spin games. Yeah, and like even if let's say if I won that match, I'd probably want to have all my 4 gutters anyway. So I would probably just replace him because I would want him back.
Well, as I say, especially the Richest T is a big fan of puns, and he was very sad to see that one, to see Tiramisu pass away. So,
yeah.
So it was mourned on our stream. Trust me, my friend. It was taken to heart. Now moving on, Squiggy and actually me as well have wondered a combination here. Is where did your nickname come from? Because obviously it is quite unique.
Yeah, there's actually an interest that it's kind of been evolutionary, but it was all actually around this random. It was when I first started playing Dawn of War. So like, you know, the old Dawn of War Warhammer 40K game, developed by Relic. I was creating an account for. Previously, I was using this concept, this name, and this was back when I was probably in middle school or. Yeah, I think it was back in middle school. I was using the name like Light Warrior or something because I'd really liked Paladins back in the day or stuff. Like I'd play like a Paladin in like D&D medievalish games, like Neverwinter Nights or these RPGs. And I couldn't find a good one for that particular like name, and it gave you these ridiculous suggestions. Like you could be light jelly and like light 5. Like it was like it just put random words together, and it's like here's a suggested name, and I'm like that's terrible. And then I saw Luminous Light right there, and I'm just like, I don't know how it managed to like put those 2 words together, but I'm like, it's actually not terrible. So I ultimately picked that name and stuck with it. And
follow from that, because I have noticed obviously you've got an anime Discord avatar. Is that Light Yagami from Death Note?
No, actually. I actually have gotten asked this in the Discord before.
I've been wondering this for the longest time, and I was like, you know what?
I'm trying to remember. The first person who asked me was he the main character of Darker Than Black? And that's also not the right answer. It's very hard to tell from the size. black hair, white, and you have this weird like it's probably a school uniform. It's actually
That's
from a visual novel. There's also an anime version of it known as Tsukihime. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's old now. It was done. I think it was originally released in the late 90s.
okay.
It was, the main character is Tonoshiki from Tsukihime. And that's actually the sprite. I think that sprite was taken away from one of the fighting games, the Melty Blood fighting games of Nanayashiki, which is kind of like his alter personality.
All right, okay, cool. Not something I've heard of, but I am a big anime fan, and I was like, I've been wondering the longest time, is that Light Yagami from Death Note? And obviously,
it's a bit obscure. I don't expect people to actually get this. If you saw the full picture, even then it'd be difficult to tell.
Well, obscure is good. Obscure is good. Now, moving on, we've got another question from Lynx from the Capital Rats, because Lynx loves this show, and shout out to him. He does so much good work and puts tons of questions together, and it's always really hard choosing like 2 or 3 of his, particularly. But he's, basically given the amount of coaches we now have, the insane amount of growth we've had as well. Now that, as I said just before we started, I did comment that we appear to be, from the maths that I've been passed, the biggest perpetual league in the game at the moment between us and the rookies. So how much work is there, on the admin side of things? Or how much do you have to do per week, would you say?
I think if you're talking about day-to-day stuff, there's not a whole lot of work because not really that involved with rolling over the divisions. That's usually Gamba who does like the actual button pressing there. There have been times where I've at work had to either reset matches or fix some stuff. Doesn't really take that much time. I think the most time involved point was last season, when we were just trying to get the season started for season 4, and I was just literally having to drag people, trying to find them and grab them. There was probably about 10 of them, I think. We were trying to get to accept their tickets, because we don't give a lot of time to accept tickets. And ultimately, I had to go email and just like blast them for like multiple days, and then make sure that they accepted the tickets. And if I couldn't find anyone, then I had to find somebody. And especially with the way Necromantic was released, it was a nightmare, because we were basically saying, look, you have to be around and you have to be able to accept your ticket within 48 hours, or maybe it was even 24 hours. It was something insane. And obviously there's people who weren't able to do that but signed up and saying, hey, I wanted to be Necromantic. So you had to like balance them over other people who were available. And we're like, yeah, I want to do it. And they were actually there. So that took hours to do on that particular end. But the playoffs, we used to have, I remember back like for season 4, it was, especially when we had those relegation matches. That was back in season 3. That was a nightmare to get all those matchups. Like you'd have to do each individual one. And then we screwed some of them up in the beginning by not making them knockouts, so they ended in ties, and that happened a couple times.
Yeah, that was. I suppose that's the one thing about us is we're constantly trying to iterate on the formula rather than just sit back and say, "Yep, we're done now." So we have experimented a few times, and there are a few coaches I suppose who've suffered at the hands of that. But I think on the whole, this season's launch was a bit smoother. We've given it a little more days, and frankly, I know I've had to pass a lot less to you. So if you ever do get an email from Luminous, you're probably on the naughty list.
Yeah, I sometimes have to email people. That hasn't happened that often, though.
As I say, certainly less this time. I think there was even less than 10 I had to ask you to email in the end to chase up. So I think we did very well. Lynx also wanted to add that they do thoroughly appreciate all the work that we do, and so keep it up. Okay, so moving on. Another good question from King of the Cosmos, actually, that I wanted to reuse. If you were a star player, what skills would you have?
A star player. What skills would I have? Let's see. Trying to go through like all the skills. Like, are we just talking stats or just skills?
Skills or stats? What would your
skills
what would you
stats.
kind of what bonuses would you have got on your level ups?
So I'd probably I'm kind of thinking like a gutter runner. At least I'll think like a gutter runner here. Not that I'm physically that fast or that
No,
small
but
either.
but obviously, you do feel a synergy for the rat at the moment, so that's
Yeah,
acceptable.
yeah.
You can be a gut runner in my book.
A star player, like, let's see. So for survivability, obviously you get dodge. You get probably block. I think there's a lot of glory in the gutter runner that ends up getting the ball, like picking up the ball or doing the crazy stuff, like getting the ball where it's ridiculously hard to get. So let's go with big hand. Well, no, let's see. Plus agility, leap, or no, how about big hand, very long legs, leap. So you get, and then you could get maybe nerves of steel to just throw the ball out.
So basically,
just for fun, I guess.
Utter nightmare at as soon as the ball goes to the ground.
You pick up the ball, and then I guess you would get pass and safe though. But then you start getting to the point. Well, I can't really pick that many skills, but it would be hilarious for a gutter runner to get those. He'd literally just pick up the ball and he could just throw it out, regardless of what's ever around them. Obviously, like there's a chance of an intercept, but if you have safe throw, it kind of offsets it.
So you'd basically just be absolute nightmare to anybody that lost the ball at any point.
Yeah, if there's a ball on the ground, it's not your ball anymore.
Okay, I like that. All right, cool. So Dreamify asked one question that I've picked up as a regular question again. How has your playstyle changed over the time? Because obviously, you've switched between teams and loves, and you have alluded to it a little bit about how you.
Yeah. When I started with North, you learn very quickly that you don't want to mark. And I think that probably hurt me when I wanted to learn Control Bash. Because Control Bash is all about placement, marking, and basically limiting what your opponent can do with guard. And the good example is, like, let's say you have 2 mummies with guard. I probably wasn't that keen, or at least not that knowledgeable on how to use those mummies, where to position them when I really started. I probably was just thinking, oh, let's push him upfield. Oh, there's this guy, let's mark him. But then you have to start thinking, well, if I mark this guy, can he hit me back? And I thought that a little bit with Norse, but you generally just learn and don't really want to mark because the chances of him hitting you back, even with a 1 die, could really, really hurt you. Like if you get powed and you lose your werewolf, it's going to be really hard to claw back. But I think where I've done a lot of development is particularly on agility based. I started off, the first agile team that I really played was Pro Elves, and so with Pro Elves, I was all like this. I actually got a strong arm passer, and no, it was a plus agility passer. First level up on my throw was plus agility, and I was just like, I'll make him into a thrower, and I used him to drop back all the time, and I won so many games doing that, but I lost the one that mattered because I snake guyed the pass that I was dropping back from, and that was against, I don't know if you remember Furl. He used to be in this league. He was in season 1. I'm not sure. He used to play a lot of lizards. I don't know if that probably rings a bell to some people.
I was going to say there was a lot of lizards back in the day, so it was.
There was a lot of bad lizards back in the day, but Furl, it was in a semifinal match in the RBBL, and I threw on my own drive a snake on the pass, and I had safe throw, so it's not like I would have kept the ball if I hadn't snake-eyed, but I did, and I lost the ball, and I ended up just could not win that game. I tried like dodging into cages with my plus agility blitzer. I had like 4 or 3 plus agility players on that Pro Elf team, so I was pretty decked, but I lost because the pass, I wasn't playing conservative enough, and passing, it's hard. When it fails, it can really hurt you. And I've learned, particularly with my Skaven team, and early on in my Skaven team, I was passing. I would say I was kind of dropping back a little bit. Like I would be like, I'll drop back a little bit, send some people, send some scoring threats, but I kind of left them exposed. But it forced me to pass, and there was just games where I couldn't do it. So I learned very quickly to take that element out of a regular element to my game.
Okay.
Maybe have the threat of it. Force your coach to acknowledge it. But if you have other options, you don't do it. And I think that's probably where I've developed the most, is to do actions, reduce the number of dice that you have to do that can result in a turnover. And I think that's why I've been fairly successful in this league.
Okay, cool. Now, Lynx, once again, because he kept hammering me with really good questions. Obviously, you do make a lot of content as well. You make videos and things. And you do stream on occasion. I have been around in some of your streams. So how much time do you spend kind of doing that? You know, is it something you'd love to pursue, or is it just something you do for fun in your free time?
So the original reason for those streams was to record those games, largely, and also like maybe some people want to watch it in the meantime. It was a very the way Twitch does it. It's very easy to upload those videos. I've thought about streaming normal different games other than outside the league. I haven't really gotten a lot of viewers and gotten kind of mixed responses in Twitch chat. And ultimately, I think the main thing that discourages me from long-term Blood Bowl, if I would just play, let's say if I were to stream more Blood Bowl, in order to get viewer bases or to get a relatively large viewer count, at least when you're starting out, you have to play a fairly long time. And I'm not a person that likes to play games back-to-back. I generally like to play a game, maybe 2 games back-to-back is the most I'll play, but I get pretty fatigued after that point. So I usually keep it to 1 game, especially if I'm working, if I'm back from work. I generally can't see myself playing more than 3 games. And that's what a lot of these streamers are able to do. And I physically just can't handle it. So that's what's inhibiting me from actually doing it. I just don't I can't sit in my chair. And well, in fact, I actually am not sitting right now. I'm actually standing. I actually have a standing desk set up. So to try to keep me, and even when I used to sit, I really could not game for that long. I would just get fatigued. So there's people who can do it. I'm just not one of them. And that's probably with streams, you can stream a little bit, but most of the good streamers stream hours and hours and hours long, and I just can't do it.
I understand. Links added video streams and puns, but you kind of already alluded to the puns by suggesting that you had a notepad and you stop and think about it every now and again. So I think we already kind of knew the answer to that. Now, a couple of people did ask as well, not just in the thread, but actually in PMs as well. Why, when you do make content, why don't you, obviously you said that you're not getting that many viewers and things, but we do have a pretty content-hungry viewer base right here in the Rebel, and they just wanted to know why you didn't promote yourself a bit more around the place.
Yeah, I don't know. I probably could just basically post it in the Discord or post it in. I mean, the videos are still coming in. I still have plans to record my at least my rel games.
Okay.
So they'll be still coming in. And in fact, I don't know. I might play Sauce later today. It all depends whether he's still around or not. Well, today it'd probably be by the time this is uploaded, the game has already been played. But yeah, I guess if there's people who want to watch it, they can. I personally don't have a whole lot of confidence in my commentating. Generally, I just commentate what I think at the time. And I've noticed that when I stream, I tend to commentate differently or act differently than if I am not. It's kind of like when people are watching you or reading or listening to you, you tend to act different. So I don't know if that's necessarily, I don't necessarily think that's a great thing for me. I think that at least when there's less pressure, that I'm a bit more open. I seem pretty reserved, at least in my streams.
Okay, fair enough. Well, what I will do as well is I will add a link to your YouTube at the bottom of the video on your Twitch as well, so people can keep track of your content. I'll grab those off you when we finish, and I'll put that on the video, of course. Now, the final question we're going to ask is, what other games do you play other than Blood Bowl? And this was one of our regular questions, but it's a good one, so we keep it.
Yeah, sure. So, you know that I played a little bit of Overwatch. We played together.
And you're very, very good. You're much better than I am at it. I'll tell you that.
I haven't. I've learned very quickly that there are people who are way better than me as well. Very, very quickly. There are games that I just struggle with. There's guys that I know how to play in that game, but I struggle, especially, at least I feel like I struggle in competitive, like the competitive one where you're fighting for MMR. In terms of other games, I generally have been sticking more to strategy. I used to play a little bit of. I remember when StarCraft 2 was originally released, I would play that a little bit online. It was probably one of the first real-time strategies that I had ever really played against another person, like at least some random person on the internet.
Okay.
Is a good way to say that. I played against other players in the past in different games like Dawn of War, Company of Heroes, like all those good old Relic strategy games. Other games that I play, I haven't been playing a whole lot of games recently. Been stuck at work, and I've been trying to like tone it back a little bit. I mean, I played a lot of games, certainly. If I were to bring up a list of games, see any games that I'm playing right now. Yeah, it's really not coming to me right now.
So
other than
mostly
Overwatch.
it's Overwatch at the moment.
Yeah, I guess that's pretty much it. I might go on something else. I was playing a little bit of Binding of Isaac earlier, like Rebirth and all that. But I haven't played Rebirth that much. I played the original a lot and beat that, but I didn't really get into Rebirth. And I don't really know why. I guess I felt like I was redoing what I had done in the previous game because you have to fight like the same bosses. And there's differences. There's new enemies and stuff, but the boss format is relatively similar.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I do like Binding of Isaac, so yeah, I'm with you on that one. I kind of see where you came from. I really didn't play it before the Rebirth, so I found Rebirth to be super enjoyable because I didn't know much about it, much more from that. But yeah, I see your point, and you always do worry when they re-release or add extras to games that are already existing that you're gonna have that problem.
I've also played like Dark Souls. I've been playing Dark Souls 3. I used to do a little bit of PvP, but I was never any good at it. You get like the occasional win, and then someone would come in and just deck you. A good example is like I would watch these streamers who would play Dark Souls 3, and they would be switching rings on mid-combat. Like they knew exactly where they were in the menus, and they could do it within like seconds. And I was just like, I can't do that, and I'm not gonna try to learn how to do that. And that's what basically I was just like, I'm not gonna be that good. Ever.
Yeah, I suppose that was
that
like,
game.
When you said stuff like StarCraft. That was me with StarCraft. It's like I could do this. I could learn a million.
Well, at the beginning, like there was a lot of new players, so it's like I actually wasn't that bad at it when I was facing against those players. But if I were to go back now, I'd get my ass handed to me. So, because now a lot of that are left are actually quite good. So.
Okay. Well, that's our 16 questions we've got there. We have just got our one little overtime bit, and this is a bit different. Sometimes we ask a bunch of questions. Sometimes we ask one question and give you a limited time to answer it. Now, this one is, because you always strike me as a very relaxed and considered coach. I don't really ever think I've seen a game where you've properly tilted. So in 90 seconds or less, could you explain how you remain calm in the face of bad dice, bad beatings, and bad interview questions?
Okay, so a lot of it comes down to just playing. I think a lot of coaches eventually get to this point. Is once you've played a lot of games, you've seen a lot of stuff happen. There's been games where I got floored by dice. A good example was when I was playing as goblins and I was playing against this high elf coach in one of the RBBL leagues, and I was very proud of my goblin team, kind of my theme, and that high elf team blitzed me 4 times in that game. 4 times. And then the kick would be short, he'd get under it, bash me up a bit, score, and it would be like, next kick, oh, it's another blitz. And it's at that point I've just learned that it's not that I've had worse. And I think there's been games where I've been diced, and since I didn't tilt, I was able to overcome it. I think that's where a lot of coaches tend to struggle, is that you can still overcome adversity. Maybe you can't, but you don't know it unless you try. So I've just learned to not let that affect me. And I've won so many games just like by the skin of my teeth because I tried to do something, even though it may or may not have worked. Like there was a very low chance of it working. So there's always a chance. At least that's what I think when I'm playing those kind of games.
So to summarize, you're saying there's a chance.
There's a chance.
Fantastic. All right, well, that's brilliant. Thank you so much, Luminous, for taking the time out to come on. It's actually been quite a long episode, but I have enjoyed our little chat, so I've kind of just let it run. I'm sure.
No problem.
I'm sure I'll get some stick for the length, but you know what? It's been a good one, and I'm very glad you got the chance to talk. Just a quick announcement, guys. We actually have got Sandoon joining us next week. I've already confirmed that with him. So that should be quite exciting, so I'll get the questions up very, very shortly. Again, trying not to do G-Man ones, even though it means I've got to either stay up till 3:30 in the morning, or get up at 9 AM to make sure I can get an interview with Sandu. Not holding it against you, Luminous, I promise. That it's 3:30 in the morning.
No problem. Yeah, it's really late for you. I live out on the West Coast, so it's not even that late here. But
well, you know, the views are worth it. So, is there anything you'd like to add before we go?
No, I don't really have anything else to add.
Okay, well, guys, season has just started. That's been Luminous Light. I've been your regular host, Full Metal. You guys take care, stay classy. We'll see you on the pitch.